Lieutenant Carrara Holt-Green wiped the sweat from her brow as she entered the mess hall of Forward Operating Base Condor. The desert heat of eastern Afghanistan was relentless even as evening approached. 3 months into her deployment, she'd grown accustomed to the stares. Being one of the few female officers on base came with unwanted attention. But today felt different. The whispers seemed more pointed, the glances more hostile. "Look who decided to grace us with her presence," muttered Petty Officer Daniels loud enough for everyone to hear. His small group of followers snickered on cue. Carrara ignored them, proceeding through the chow line. Her mind was elsewhere, focused on tomorrow's mission briefing. Colonel Eileen Collins had personally requested her presence, which was unusual enough to be concerning. Intelligence had reported increased enemy movement in the valley, and air support would be critical in the coming days. As she sat alone at the far table, Karen noticed Daniels and his 3 companions approaching. Their body language set off immediate alarms in her mind. The way they spread out, their forced casual demeanor. She'd seen this pattern before, though not since her specialized training days. "Lieutenant," Daniel said with mock respect. "We were just discussing the new uniform regulations." His hands slipped behind his back. "Some of us think the women's uniforms need adjustments." The mess hall grew quieter. Other sailors and Marines sensed the confrontation brewing, but remained spectators. Carrara set down her fork, her muscles tensing imperceptibly. "I wasn't aware you joined the uniform committee, Daniels," she replied evenly, her eyes tracking his concealed hand. "Just taking initiative," he smirked, revealing a tactical knife. "Maybe if your uniform was a bit more feminine, you'd remember your place around here." What Daniels and his friends didn't know, what nobody at FOB Condor knew except Colonel Collins, was that before Carol Holt-Green became one of the Navy's pioneering female fighter pilots, she had undergone specialized training with the Navy SEALs. Her file contained redacted sections that hinted at operations alongside Lieutenant Audie Murphy's Special Reconnaissance Team. Her pilot training had come later, a cover for her other skills. As Daniels lunged forward to grab her collar, intending to cut her uniform in what he considered a harmless prank, Carrara's body responded with muscle memory honed through thousands of hours of training. Her left hand caught his wrist mid-motion while her right hand simultaneously struck his elbow joint. The knife clattered to the floor as Daniels found himself suddenly immobilized, his arm twisted behind his back, his face pressed against the metal table. His 3 companions froze, shocked by the instantaneous reversal. The entire mess hall fell silent. "Wrong person to mess with, Daniels," Carrara whispered, applying just enough pressure to make her points without causing injury. She released him and calmly picked up the knife. "Lieutenant Holt-Green," came a commanding voice from the entrance. Colonel Collins stood watching, her expression unreadable. "A word in my office, please." As Kara followed the colonel out, leaving behind a stunned audience. She knew her carefully maintained cover was compromised. Tomorrow's mission would now be complicated by this incident. But perhaps it was time the base understood exactly who they had in their midst. With tensions rising in the region and intelligence suggesting a major enemy offensive, her particular set of skills might soon be needed for more than just flying support missions. Colonel Collins closed her office door, the distant sound of choppers providing background to their conversation. She studied Carrara with calculating eyes. Before speaking, that display in the mess hall wasn't exactly low profile. Lieutenant Carrara stood at attention. "No excuse, ma'am," Collins sighed, sliding a classified folder across her desk. "Your cover was going to be blown eventually. Might as well be now." She tapped the folder. "Operation Sandstorm has been moved up. The intelligence we received this morning changes everything." Inside the folder, satellite images showed enemy movements through the mountain passes, far more organized than typical insurgent activity. Collins explained that a high-value target had been identified, one connected to plan the tags on 3 major U.S. bases in the region. "This is why you're really here, Holtron. Not for your piloting skills, though they're exceptional." Collins lowered her voice. "Admiral Nelson personally requested you for this operation. Your training under Murphy wasn't just for show." The next morning, Carrara found herself briefing a small team that included, to her dismay, Petty Officer Daniels and his friends. Their expressions ranged from skeptical to openly hostile as Colonel Collins explained that Lieutenant Holt-Green would be leading the ground elements of the mission while Collins coordinated air support. "This is bull," Daniels began before being silenced by Collins' glare. "Lieutenant Holt-Green has qualifications you don't know about. Petty officer, your life may depend on following her orders. The mission began at 0300 hours. 2 helicopters inserted the team 10 miles from the suspected enemy compound. What should have been a straightforward reconnaissance operation quickly deteriorated when their communications were jammed, the first sign they'd been compromised. They knew we were coming, Carol whispered as they took cover in a rocky outcropping. The sound of vehicles approaching forced a decision. We need to split up. Daniels, you're with me. The rest of you fall back to extraction point Bravo. Daniels looked ready to object, but swallowed his protest when gunfire erupted nearby. As they separated, Kara caught a glimpse of something that chilled her. The enemy forces weren't typical insurgents, but appeared to be wearing fragments of American tactical gear. Moving through a dry riverbed, Carrara and Daniels advanced toward the compound. Their uneasy alliance was strained by yesterday's confrontation, but survival instincts temporarily overrode personal animosity. How did you learn to move like that? Daniels finally asked as they paused behind an abandoned structure. The same place I learned this, Carol replied, quickly disassembling and clearing a jammed weapon Daniels had been struggling with. 2 years with Murphy's team before I was transferred to flight school. Their conversation was cut short by an explosion that rocked the valley. The exfil point where their teammates had headed was now engulfed in flames. They hit our exfil, Kara said grimly, raising her binoculars. What she saw next made her blood run cold. Among the enemy forces coordinating the attack was a familiar face, Lieutenant Edward Mercer, who had been reported killed in action 3 months earlier. We've got a bigger problem than we thought, she told Daniels, passing him the binoculars. This isn't just an ambush. It's a betrayal. As they watched, Mercer directed his men toward their position. Their cover was blown, extraction was compromised, and the realization dawned that someone high in the command chain had set them up. With communications jammed and surrounded by superior forces, Carrara made a decision that went against all protocols. We're not retreating, she told a wide-eyed Daniels. We're going straight into that compound. It's the last place they'll expect us to go. That's suicide, Daniels protested. Carrara checked her weapon. No, that's our only chance to find out who's really running this operation and maybe the only way to warn the base before the main attack begins. The compound loomed before them, a maze of concrete and corrugated metal. Kara and Daniels moved silently through the shadows, the sound of enemy communications crackling nearby. They had one advantage. No one expected them to move toward danger rather than away from it. There, Kara whispered, pointing to a small communications hub where Lieutenant Mercer had entered. That's our target. Daniels nodded, his earlier antagonism replaced by grim determination. What's the play? We need those communications equipment to warn the base, and we need Mercer alive. Using hand signals she'd learned during her SEAL training, Kara coordinated their approach. Daniels followed her lead without question. The hierarchy of the mess hall confrontation now irrelevant in the face of survival. They breached the building with practiced precision. 2 guards fell silently before an alarm could be raised. Inside, they discovered Mercer hunched over a radio, speaking in coded language. His shock at seeing them gave Tara the split second she needed. Don't, she warned as his hand moved toward a sidearm. Mercer's face twisted into a sneer. Hulk Green should have known they'd send Murphy's pep project. Why? Daniels demanded. You were one of us. One of you, Mercer laughed bitterly. I was expendable just like you two. Just like everyone they send out here to die while they negotiate oil deals. Kara kept her weapon trained on him while accessing the communications equipment. The attack on the base went too late to stop it. Mercer taunted. The first wave launches in 20 minutes. Working quickly, Kara bypassed the jamming frequency, establishing a direct line to Colonel Collins. As she relayed the intelligence, Mercer lunged for a hidden detonator. Daniels reacted instantly, tackling him to the ground. In the struggle, Mercer's finger found the trigger. Run, Daniels shouted, pinning Mercer down. I've got him. Complete the mission. Kara hesitated only a moment before grabbing the intelligence files and communications codes from the desk. Their eyes met in silent understanding. Daniels was making a choice he couldn't take back. Tell them what really happened here, he said as she backed toward the door. The explosion rocked the compound as Kara sprinted toward the extraction point. The sacrifice gave her the window needed to reach the emergency rendezvous where Colonel Collins had dispatched the rescue helicopter after receiving her warning. Back at Fob Condor, the base had mobilized based on Kara's intelligence. The enemy attack meant to be a surprise met prepared defenses. What would have been a devastating blow became a decisive victory. 3 days later, Kara stood at attention in Colonel Collins' office as Admiral Nelson himself pinned a combination to her uniform. Lieutenant Hulk Green's actions saved hundreds of lives, Nelson announced to the assembled officers, including the surviving members of Daniel's group, and Petty Officer Daniel's sacrifice will not be forgotten. After the ceremony, the sailors who had once cut her uniform approached Kara. Their leader, a young petty officer named Rodriguez, extended his hand. "Daniels was our friend," he said quietly. "He told me once that if he ever found someone worth following into battle, he'd know it." Guess he did. 6 months later, Kara stood before a new class of recruits, men and women selected for a specialized program combining SEAL tactics with aviation capabilities. Colonel Collins had given her the opportunity to shape the next generation of operators. "The uniform doesn't make the warrior," she told them on their first day, touching the small pen she wore in Daniel's memory. "And sometimes the people you underestimate become the ones who save your life." As she looked out at their faces, eager, uncertain, determined, Kara recognized what Daniels understood in his final moments. That true strength isn't measured by who can intimidate others, but who will stand their ground when everything is at stake. The legacy of what happened in that compound wasn't just about the lives saved at Fob Condor, but about how a moment of respect between former adversaries had changed the course of a war none of them had fully understood until they faced it together.